What's going on, guys? Look what I get to play with. This is my Suzuki GSXR 1000. Now, I've made a ton of videos with this motorcycle. I've told you why I like it so much, and it's so much fun and all that kind of good stuff. I've also talked a little bit about some of the things that I didn't quite like about this bike, but I want to go into a little bit more detail. It can't always be sunshine and rainbows. And guys, there is a little bit to be desired when it comes to the GSXR 1000. So let's get her fired up and let's talk about some of the modifications that I've done to this motorcycle, and more importantly, why I went about it. Also, I'll talk a little bit about maybe a couple of things I feel like the bike should have come with from the factory that could eventually get swapped out along the way. So, enough of that intro. Let's get rolling. Oh my goodness, every time I ride this bike, I'm reminded of why I bought it. It is just so good. But there are some things that I felt like needed to be done to this bike. I also felt like there were some corners cut by Suzuki. Now, they're corners that I agree with them cutting, but all the same, there's still corners that were cut. One of those is not the engine, though. God, this bike delivers power so linearly and so nice. Love how this bike handles, too. So many things about this bike I like. It's hard to find things that I don't or that I didn't. Okay guys, hitting her onto the highway. A little bit more of a leisurely pace so that we can actually chat about some things with this bike. Okay, so first of all, looking down at the cluster, I personally don't have a problem with this bike having an old school LCD screen. There's plenty going on the screen in terms of information. Certainly not lacking in that department. The one beef that I have, though, is the shift light. This right here. You'll see a little bit more of that a little bit later in this video, but a TFT would actually be a little bit better for this bike, I feel. Mainly because with a TFT, with other bikes that I've ridden, for your shift light, you can have your whole TFT go absolutely nuts when you start to get onto your shift point. And that's great. As I'm riding this motorcycle and I'm in a committed position, I can still see the lower part of that screen with my peripheral vision, but it would really be nice if it had a TFT screen to where maybe the whole tack would light up in red or green or something, anything. As it stands, it's just these lights up here. Better to have than not, but certainly not optimal, especially with getting with the times of today's technology. So, keeping the theme of talking about technology with this bike, the other gripe that I have is with the quick shifter on this bike. Now, 99.9% of the time it works flawlessly, but there are some times where on upshifts you'll get a bobble, and it's usually for this particular bike on the 1-2 shift. Now, I think I know what that issue is. I think it's a heat related thing because it doesn't really flake out when the bike's been sitting for a while and it's cool and you initially start riding. And it doesn't have an issue as you're riding the bike. It only seems to be an issue if the bike sits after it's been ridden for a while. Maybe that component gets heat soaked. Not exactly sure, but I can tell you that it will juggle, I guess. It'll brrr on the 1-2 shift. What's the right word for that? Anyway, That's what it'll do. So that can be a bit annoying, but it'll only do it once, maybe twice at the most. And then that's it. I can't get it to fail or at least act goofy again. So I've written it off as just a quirk of this bike. Technology can't always hit a home run, I guess, right? Anyway, that's the way I'll rationalize it. The other issue with that quick shifter is on blip downshifts. This bike on a blip sometimes will have a knack for lurching the bike forward a little bit on that downshift. Again, it's tough to get it to do it. Usually seems to happen if I hammer a downshift more through the mid-range maybe. I don't know. Again, it's one of those things where it doesn't really ever upset the bike too much. And usually I've already set up for the corner leading up to a corner entry. So is it that much of an issue? Again, I've rationalized it as just part of how this bike is. However, I will be replacing that sensor just to see if it makes a difference. So there's that. Okay, so that's about it in terms of complaints about technology on this bike. But mechanically, okay, maybe there is a couple of things. First, the levers. The way this bike comes from the factory, it has an adjustable brake lever, but a non-adjustable clutch lever. That's really annoying. Yeah, most bikes that I've ridden, at least by my memory, have an adjustable clutch lever. And that, to me, it just should be part of the standard equipment for a sport bike. Alright, let's take a break from complaining. Have a little fun with this thing. Setting her up, dropping her in. On the brakes, engine trail brake, dropping her back, only engine brake. On the brakes, grab a couple of gears down as we come to our favorite happy little stop sign. Okay, so getting back to it, the levers on this bike are not adjustable. The clutch lever, I should be more specific, is not adjustable on this bike. And for a lot of guys, if you've got bigger hands or you two-finger clutch like I do, some guys use a middle, some guys even use just one finger, but either way, what'll happen is your knuckles are here and you're not getting a full throw of the clutch. I mean, you can adjust out some of that, but what ends up happening is that some guys end up just, see, it bobbled right there, but it won't do it again. And that's the thing. Again, was it heat soaked? Don't know, but that's the only time I can get it to bobble, so I'm glad I got it to do it, and that time it was on the 2-3 shift. Now, I promise you, it will not do it again. So, again, just a quirk of the bike, and if I'm being honest, you guys may not have even noticed that. So, sorry, I wanted to bring that to you as it took place. So anyway, yeah, it needs to have, from the factory, adjustable clutch levers. It does not cost any more to have an adjustable clutch lever. And again, this is a sport bike. I feel like you need to have that type of adjustability. That's an area where I feel like they cheapened out. Another thing that this bike has is I put a 44-tooth rear sprocket on this bike. What that allows is it allows for a little bit longer third gear and a little bit longer fourth gear. And it also takes some of the bite out of this bike. This bike has a ton of tip-in throttle response, and it's making a whole lot of power, especially with the tune and exhaust. So dropping the tooth out back just gave me a little bit longer legs. Some of the areas that I like to ride in, I really do need the extra length of the gear, and so it worked out great. But a big thing that it does is it takes some of the violent nature of this bike out of it. I know some of the roll race guys will drop a couple of teeth, but for me, one tooth is just fine. Okay, so the tune on this bike. From the factory, okay, this motorcycle has got to be reflashed. It needs a remap from the factory. There's so much potential with this bike, but one of the issues is that at about 11,000 RPM, maybe a little bit more, but certainly not past 12,000, this bike will just lay over. The factory tune on this bike is, I mean, it's passable. You can still ride the thing. It'll still be a lot of fun, but the minute you start trying to push this bike up in the upper RPM ranges, it is going to start laying over. A remap completely changes the complexion of this bike. Consider that as just part of the cost of doing business, really with any modern motorcycle, but especially if you're looking at a GSXR 1000, you're probably already budgeting exhaust in a tune anyway. If you're not, you're gonna wanna. So outside of that, you know, the mirrors I swapped over to these winglets, mainly because I like to be able to see kind of right where those mirrors are. So they were just more or less in the way. I typically don't end up using mirrors anyway. I've had them help as much as hurt me, so I may end up putting block-off plates up there. But all in all, it's a great bike. Oh, well, there is a different windscreen on this thing, but that's really up to the owner. You might like it, you might not, as far as having an aftermarket windscreen. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? That's pretty much it, as far as things that I don't like. Oh, one other thing, a couple of other things. The suspension. So from the factory, guys, this bike was set up stiff. Even for somebody of my weight, I'm just the other side of 200 pounds in gear, and my goodness, this bike was set up stiff. Little bumps like we just went over right there would be, that would have hurt. So I did soften this bike up quite a bit. I've spent a ton of time adjusting suspension on this bike, and all of it to soften it up, and I gotta tell you, it's really good now. It's comfortable. It's very comfortable, much more compliant. I mean, look, it is still a GSXR 1000, so it's still stiff, but it's nothing like what it was before. Far easier to spend time with this bike, and it's more compliant. Going through corners and long sweepers, it tends to deal with that a whole lot better now. And last, maybe not necessarily a big gripe that I have, this bike comes with Bridgestone R11s. I'm still rocking the Bridgestone R11 front tire, but the R11 rear tire, this bike ate that up pretty quickly. So now I'm rocking an S23, and it tends to do really, really well with this bike. So R11 up front, S23 out back, just to get a little bit of longevity. But with all that being said, it looks like I'm going to be needing a new rear tire here pretty soon, because leader bikes eat tires, and that's what they seem to do best. So outside of that, any other complaints? Not really. The brakes are pretty good. You know, for track use, I would certainly go with a different set of brake pads, but for street use, they work just fine. And everything else about the bike I absolutely love. The ergonomics, that part of it, Suzuki absolutely nailed it. And golly, I mean, it takes a lot to complain about this bike for me, but that being said, I do feel like there was some room for improvement, so I did make those changes, and now for me it is the perfect companion on a really pretty Sunday like today. Speaking of which, I'm going to get back out and have some fun with this thing. Listen, if you've made it this far, consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps the channel out a ton. And with that, thanks for stopping by. Hope to catch you on the next one.